everybody. Welcome to Perspectives with Catherine Toon. And I have a new guest and a new friend, and we have been chatting, and there's such richness. And, when I first ran into you, Scott Cook, kind of in the Grace Awakening Network community, I thought, got to have Scott on. You have there's so much meatiness and just wisdom and the grace of God that you just flow in. So I'm so happy to have you on.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. I really am. I always enjoy talking with others and doing things like this. I really do.
Wonderful. Well, we've been talking a bit, and wow, you have an amazing story on so many different levels. And I thought, dang, we need to get this on the recording, because there's going to be people that will resonate with your journey and will resonate with the vulnerability of the pain points that you have gone through. So, tell us about your journey personally and professionally, that whole thing. There's a lot there, and I think it's going to be a huge blessing to people.
Okay, absolutely. And thanks for having me on. I appreciate you doing this. And I'm really enjoy sharing my story. And I'll keep it a little more condensed than I might normally do in a larger audience. But I was raised in a Christian home. My parents were Southern Baptist. Don't hold that against me. But we were at church morning. If they could, they would have gone every day. My friends were at church. The people there were they were our community and really family in some ways, because some of our family were not believers. And so that's a place where my mom and dad found a lot of acceptance, a lot of wisdom, if you will, to live their lives. And so all my years growing up, I was involved in church. I was involved in youth group, choir, all the things that people my age, back in the 70s and 80s growing up. I eventually went to college, graduated from there with a business degree, was in real estate finance for a number of years, got married. I have two children, both boys, and they're in their 20s and early 30s. And the problem is as I was doing all this, I had never really dealt with a lot of the pain, that the trauma that I went through because of the relationship with my mother, primarily. And she was kind of a low-grade narcissist, and was someone who herself came out of a very difficult situation with her father, who was a womanizer and someone who was never around. And so she had a lot of, if you will, emotional abandonment, and did not trust men in general. My father was a compliant individual, very wonderful person, but was someone she could control. And I grew up never really feeling love, never really feeling any connection emotionally with her. And so I ended up going to seminary. But as I told you earlier, for me, it was probably a way of trying to find the divine feminine. Is there a place where I can be nurtured? Is there someplace I could, is God male, female? Is he whole, one, if you will? Because all I'd ever heard of it was, God is male. All is God is man, is masculine from masculine. Obviously, and they were all white men, preaching to me. And so I was on a search for acceptance, if you will, of being affirmed. And I remember with my mom, if we ever hugged, it's because I initiated it. My mother never reached out to hug me. I never actually told me one time, I'll never love you like I do your sister. So don't ask me for that. Don't seek that, because I won't love you that way. And so I had this huge, need in my soul, this dark hole in my soul, and I went looking for it in all kinds of places, and anger as well. I was, in some ways, angry at women. I blamed sometimes the feminine side because of what happened to me, but it wasn't women's fault. It was what my mother had been through and the way she approached life, even though she was a believer, which taught me that we must at some point come to terms with our past. We have to make peace with what's happened. And you can only do that when you go to your spirit, your higher self, and you begin to see who you are and begin to actually unpack what happened. But it took me a long time to come to that. And ended up going to seminary. I went to the Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth. I graduated with a Master's of Divinity there, and focused on the biblical languages, on pastoral leadership, and then pastoral counseling. And that's what I did for a number of years after seminary. And but after about 12 years of that, I had been in Texas, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I'd been in Missouri and St. Louis, and then I'd been in Knoxville, Tennessee, and had been a senior pastor and then later a teaching pastor. But my wife at that time asked me for divorce, because she just basically walked away from God, the church, all of it, for a variety of reasons. Obviously, our relationship was part of that, and the problems that we had had. And so I found myself in 2004 living with my mother.
Wow.
I lost my family, I lost my house, I lost my career, I lost my job, I lost my finances. I took over this van that we had because I had two children, and the kids were living with her, and I really lost my identity. And I was down to just basically living in a back room with a person who told me, "Don't seek love from me."
Wow.
And it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. And people might look at that and gasp a little bit, but it really was.
Sorry, I'm
Um,
smiling because I can relate. So yeah, keep going. We're gonna
yeah, so I was angry though at God. I really said, "Well, listen, if you don't care any more than this, why should I?" So I kind of walked away from ministry. I went back into business, back into the financial real estate area, and with a company that sold securities. Was a big part of the capital raise area. But I found myself, instead of doing what I had been doing, I was doing training. Ended up being a director of training, then later vice president of organizational development and training. I did a lot of coaching with employees as well as with the C-suite, the CEO, folks like that, and then began to do other things. And so it was during this time I started my deconstruction, excuse me. And that is when I began to really unpack a lot of things. I really started asking myself, what is it I believe? I wanted to walk away from Christianity, but I couldn't walk away from Jesus. I had a lot of reasons to walk away from Christianity, churchianity, if you will, but I couldn't walk away from Jesus. There was simply too much evidence. I'm a very evidence-based individual, very factual, and it's kind of, you have to prove it to me a little bit. And the more I saw about Jesus' life and more my own experience, I just was like, yeah, I can't do that. That's not,
Be
you know,
honest.
yeah, it's just not credible. I'm not being honest if I do that. And so I did not, but I did walk away with a lot of other stuff. And so I began to realize I'm not even sure what I am. Well, I later determined I'm a follower of the way, because I began to read Acts and I began to see where Paul never said Christian, but he said follower of the way. And he admitted, I am a follower of the way.
Mhm.
And I began to ask myself, well, why are people a follower of the way? Well, they were following the way of Jesus. He operated in a way that was foreign to them. He loved people.
And
He
he is
was
the way.
giving.
So a
Yeah.
follower of the person who is the way, and he has ways that we
Yeah.
follow, which is
He
great.
is the way. So it is a different, if you will, way of thinking. And so that began to be a big part of my deconstruction. Well, after about, it was quite a few years, 12, 13 years, I had a neurological condition that caused me to have to, I was getting ready to start a new job, actually. I'd been at this one company over 10 years, and I was getting ready to do nothing but work with the C-suite. So I was getting to really do kind of more the coaching, is what I'm trying to say. I was doing executive coaching. And I was so sick that I couldn't take the job. And I couldn't do the work with my other company. I literally was out of work for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. And it was a time where I had to just listen and be quiet and deal with a lot of my inner anger and some of the things that I had not
Maybe when
dealt
you
with.
get quiet and start and slow down, or forced to slow down, what starts to come up, because this is the stuff that's running our lives, that God
Right.
wants to heal. Yeah. So can relate. Keep going.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was great.
And I'm a doer, and I'm fairly ambitious person. My wife complains, you're always thinking, right? I said, listen, I don't tell you 90% of what the thoughts I do have. And if I did, you wouldn't be with me.
I'm telling
So,
you.
I've got to, I do it. And I've learned through meditation to slow all of that down, but it doesn't come naturally to me. And so, um, anyways, around 2017, I left the church I was at to go do work with the church that was a Messianic church. They needed a executive pastor to sort of help them with some problems they were having because they'd been growing. And so I knew how to do that stuff. And so I was well enough by that time that I was more functioning then. So I worked with them for about a year. And it was during this time that a group from my old church came to me and said, listen, we really like the grace message you were preaching. And would you be willing to, like, maybe twice a month in our homes just teach this? And so I said, sure. I didn't go looking for any of this. I really didn't. I was just doing what came to me, and God brought it to me. And so that was the start of the ministry of Abiding in Agape, Abiding in Love. And so by that time, I had come to the realization that the only thing that mattered really was love. And if we haven't understood that, then we haven't understood the person of Christ, nor who we are. And so I just began teaching that. Well, after several months, like, one of the guys that helped set this up said, you need to put this in a book, and so people can just buy it and read it when they want. And I said, well, I don't like to write. I like to speak. I like to do this. I like to interact with people, but I'm not a writer. And Steve McVeigh told me, he said, well, then you probably need to write, because most of the people who are good writers don't have anything to say, and the people who can't write do have something to say, and you have something to say, so it doesn't matter that you can't write. Just go do it. And so that's, he was probably the first to really encourage me to do this book, and I did. And because up until that time, I was still resisting it a little bit. I thought, I'll put the notes online, but that's not really the same. So I did. From 2019 to 2023, I worked on this book after I'd finished this round of teaching with these people. It took me 4 years to write this book because I didn't know what I was doing. I made so many mistakes.
I can relate, right? Just kind of like,
Yeah, I mean,
I'm doing it. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you go through dry periods. You have periods where you can't get anything done. I would go months and not write anything, and then I would go weeks and write entire chapters and stuff. But that book came out in 23, and it was during this time that I had a person come to me in 2018, probably about 4 months after I started the group. They came to me and said, "Would you counsel me?" And I said, "Sure." I said, "But I'm a pastor. I just do pastoral counseling and coaching, and that's all I do. But I have some stuff I use with people. I'm happy to do that." Well, by the end of 2018, I had 6 clients. And I had never advertised. I'd never told anybody that I would do that. And by the end of the next year, I had over 12 clients. And so God just put me in business, and just brought people to me. And that's just the way it's been since the start of this over 8 years ago. And in the late, I guess 2 or 3 years ago, I ended up writing my second book, which is Breaking Free from Churchianity, because after helping people work through making peace with the past, I began to realize that's great, but if you don't help them make peace with religion,
Yeah.
with where they're at in that, then you're leaving them kind of stranded a little bit.
Yeah.
So during this time where I was finishing that book, I've been working on the other. And what was interesting is I was struggling as to whether or not I was going to write this book, but a pastor at a large Baptist church here was connected to me through another individual, guy who's an attorney in town. And I went to lunch with him, and I had this was right after COVID and lockdowns. It was probably late 21, early 22. And he was just ready to walk away from everything because he was like, the church is fragmented. He said, they're divided. He said, I don't understand this. And what he didn't understand is he was deconstructing. He was having to do it in a church where it's hard to do that. And so I sort of helped coach him through that a little bit, and ways to do that, and how he could figure out what the best path for him was. And I went away from that meeting going, well, maybe I should write this. Well, a week later, I had a lunch with another pastor who had reached out to me, and he was doing, it was the exact same thing. And he said, man, have you ever written this, down? I goes, no, I really haven't. He said, you should.
In my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I was counseling people in it by then, and so I did. I wrote the second book, and that came out, I guess, a year ago. And then my third book was Steve McVeigh introduced me to the concepts of quantum physics and quantum
Yeah.
realities back in 2018. So when I first saw him do that online, I reached out to him. I said, man, are you a new age or what are you doing? And he said, oh no. And he invited me to a conference he had in Florida. And so I went to that, and we had some lunch and did some stuff. And I just really, started studying. I thought, man, I knew this stuff, but I didn't know it.
Yeah.
And so I started sitting down, and since 2019 till today, that stuff has really changed my perspective.
Wow.
And what I realized is that God wanted me to be more open-minded about what's called general revelation.
Yes.
And general revelation is everything that's not the Bible, Jesus, miracles, or signs.
Mm-hmm.
And what we tend to focus on is special revelation.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is that's leaving out 99% of everything else that God has done.
Wow.
And if I sat down with the Apostle Paul and said, have you considered atoms? Have you considered subatomic particles?
Right.
Have you considered cells and what they do when people are sick?
Mm-hmm.
Have you considered molecular biology? Mm-hmm. He would look at you with a stare, because it would be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Why? He didn't have that revelation.
Okay.
That doesn't diminish the revelation he did have. Doesn't mean we don't use the Bible.
That's the beauty. We get everything. And so we get all of God preaching through all of those things, through the created realm, through the seen realm, and all. Yeah. So sorry, keep on going. This is great. Yeah.
Yeah. So I began to incorporate things such as the observer effect, entanglement, the fact that every outcome is already in preposition. Already is in potential. The funny way that electrons work, the light, and the different on the electromagnetic spectrum, and it opened up an entirely new world to me of God. And the reality was that had been closed off to a lot of this, but as I began to join it to what I knew about Scripture began to open up to me in ways that had not. And what I began to see was that Jesus was really a quantum person in many aspects, the way he operated. Now, I'm not saying was it the Son of God, he was, but what I'm saying is he operated in a way. And then he said, listen, the things that I do, you're going to do greater things than that.
Yes.
And so I kept thinking, man, I'm not doing that. I'm acting as though this isn't true. And so I began to dive into astronomy, not astrology, astronomy, and the study of the cosmos, right? And I began to dive into geology and archaeology and anthropology. A guy by the name of Andre Rabe opened my eyes to.
Andre, he's been on the show.
Yeah, and he helped me tremendously. I read all his books, and he helped me with the scapegoat mechanism, mimetic theory, Rene Girard's theory and that completely changed my understanding of the atonement. Just revolutionized how I see it. As did Friends with the Toy and his understanding of the atonement. And so his Bible, probably as much as any, has impacted me in that area. And so all of that then came together, and I wrote the third book, Thrive, Not Just Survive, How to Live From Within. And that just published in June. And so that book is really about, okay, I'm deconstructing, I'm doing that, then how then should I live?
Exactly.
And is what people are asking. And I said, well, you live from your inner man, your inner spirit. The inner man, as the Bible calls it, the inner person, the inner spirit. Why? Because we're one with Christ there. You're a spiritual being first and foremost. That's who you are. And you have a soul and you live within a body. And that body is your experience suit, as Peter Lord used to tell me. It's your experience suit. Some people watching this will know Peter Lord, but he was the first one that challenged me on that whole concept years ago. And we are having an experience just as Jesus did. I love the way Jesus put it. He said, I know where I'm from, I know where I'm going. And what he was saying to the Pharisees was, I know who I actually am. I know I'm here, and I know where I'm going from this point. You're in the law, and you don't see that. Instead of coming into spirit and grace and seeing that this is a finished work that I'm doing. And that threatened everything that they held tightly to and wanted. And so the book is all about coming to terms with looking at general revelation, being open to what it says. And here's what I always do. I say, Father, I am interested in truth, love, and my life in Christ. And whatever this has to say, I'm absolutely open to that. And I trust you to lead me and guide me and keep me on the path. And if I get off, you get me back on.
Exactly.
And sometimes, and sometimes getting off the path is where you find the greatest beauty.
Yeah.
And you come back to the path with that beauty. I was in Sedona 2 weeks ago with my wife, and we were hiking around the foothills there, Sedona. And we got off the path. And she, of course, I keep going, and she's like, I think we're off the path. I said, no, I don't. Whatever this is, it's beautiful. Let's just keep going. And so we got to the base of this hill that was sticking out up. It was just gorgeous. So, and with all the green trees that I guess can only grow there because I've never seen them, and the redness and all the colors of the dirt. So I got out my phone and I did a quick TikTok, and it was just gorgeous. But I wouldn't have gotten that if I hadn't got off the path.
Exactly.
And deconstruction will get you off what you think is the path. But God just pulls you back around and gets you back. But then he has given you some things that you wouldn't get without it.
Exactly.
That's what has to happen for us. And the thing that I found is that in my religious experience, I was dominated by fear.
Yeah, exactly.
And most of my clients, when they come to my office, I assume two things. One, I'm talking to their ego, not their spiritual self. Two, it's dominated generally by fear, not love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they don't really know God. They don't really know themselves. And thus, they don't really know other people. And so my job is not to convince them of that. My job is to walk them through, how did I get here? What happened that caused us to come to this point today? And then begin to forgive and release and heal and do those things that actually bring a closure, if you will, to it. So when you begin to go inwards, and I've really used meditation in that, and you begin to then, in meditating, the Spirit will give you what you should contemplate on. So you start to live intuitively, not legally.
Yeah.
The old covenant's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone. And Jesus lived as though it's gone, which got him killed.
Yep.
But it doesn't apply to, according to the Apostle Paul or Jesus. It doesn't apply to us. Why? You weren't built to take a book around and figure out what you're supposed to do each moment.
True.
It doesn't work. You are in him. Jesus said, listen, I'm in my Father. You are in me and I'm in you. All he was trying to say is we're one.
Exactly.
So you've already got everything you need. What are you going to add to it? Go inward. Go to your spirit. It is spirit that gives you what you need each moment. And you have everything you need. But I didn't know how to do it. And I thought, well, if I don't know how to do it, then I guarantee if people come see me, don't know how to do it.
True.
And that's when I began to meditate the process. And that process took about 6 or 7 years for me, to where I could get to a point that I could confidently begin to help others and guide them in their own way of doing that.
It's amazing how what God is leading us into to heal ourselves is what we're able to minister back. Very similar story. And so much of what I do is coaching. So I'm tracking. So this is great. Yeah.
I'm a spiritual guy. I try to tell people I'm a peddler of truth. I just want to know, what is the truth? And I ask a lot of questions. Most of my sessions, I talk about 10% of the time. Most of the time I'm listening or ask a question, because guides don't have to tell you everything. They just sort of say, here's the way. Now, what are you seeing? What are you feeling? Where are you at? What's happened? What's God saying to you? 9 times out of 10, I'll quiet a session down, a client down, and we'll close our eyes and I'll say, intuitively, what do you sense the Spirit of God saying to you?
It's good. And
immediately they know. Yeah. Because and then later they'll go, I didn't know I could do that. I said, yeah, you've always been able to do that. And then they'll always say, well, what if I do? It doesn't. Listen, you have a Father that loves you more than you can imagine.
Exactly.
It's like when your little child was walking and you were behind him. I love watching a mother behind a child walking. She doesn't want him to fall, but she doesn't keep him from falling.
Right.
Is that because she doesn't love them? They're not good. They don't have what they need. No, because she knows that she must at some point back away if the child's to learn and grow.
Mhm.
And it hurts her more than it does them when they fall because of her heart for the child. But fall they must.
Yeah.
And then she gets them up, dusts them off, and then all of a sudden she'll do this, and then she lets go again.
Mhm.
And then eventually they don't even know you let go.
Right.
And they just go, well, that's what God's doing with us.
Mhm.
But we have to learn to listen to the
Mhm.
guidance. And it
It
takes time to
requires
do.
it. It does, and which requires us to get quiet, and we
Yes.
resist so much the quiet that's necessary in the contemplation, in the meditation, because a lot of times in the quiet, all the stuff that we've been avoiding, all the pain we've been avoiding, the insecurities, the fear, the voices, pick a card, any card, starts to come up. And so,
Right.
right, so we avoid, or we, we're constantly having something on, and but the beauty of it is that's where the freedom is, and that's where
It
you're
is.
connecting with the God that is there to bring you into all that wholeness, the fullness of who you are, and the fullness of what He has for you. And so that's just
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah. So I think you're right. It's just, to me, I don't really pray in the sense of, when someone says, well, let's pray,
Hmm.
I don't really do that anymore. Not
Right,
because I'm down on it. If you like doing that, more power to you, I'm fine with that. I don't care. But what I found is that when I listen
mhm,
and I don't presume to
yeah,
know
mhm,
what needs to happen, and I don't presume to know good and evil.
mhm,
When Jesus has said, don't judge,
mhm,
because
mhm.
when you judge, you get it wrong.
Yep,
What he was trying to say was, there's a lot more going on here than you realize.
yeah,
Why don't you listen? Why don't you observe? A good investigator, when they come to a crime scene, will
mhm,
simply listen and
mhm,
observe. They
mhm,
just look around and they ask questions.
yeah.
We need to be better at asking questions,
Well,
better at listening.
and then listening, because
Listening.
right, because it's one thing to ask a question, you get about it like a 2 second like ability to put something in there.
Yes.
But that's where it's being uncovered. So I mean, in my opinion, prayer is all about it's more of a conversation, which requires us to
Yeah.
listen more, because wow, he might know more than we do, right? uh,
Right.
so so and understanding that that is something that we're built in uh, to be able to do. So it's a matter of uncovering and practicing that, because like you, I tend to be a doer, tend to go right, and uh, to be able to slow down, to be able to receive the things that God already
Yeah.
has for us. But there's in the process of the engagement is where that intimacy is forged,
Yeah.
and that relationship is forged, and it's beautiful. Yeah.
And it's kind of like marriage. You were telling me you've been married 30 years. I'm in my 20th year of my second marriage with my
Mhm.
wife, Cindy. And um, you learn to have conversations with that person. You think you know it when you get married,
Yeah.
but
Right.
you don't,
Yeah. Right.
because there's so much about that person you don't really know,
Yeah.
right?
And think about, there's just so much about ourselves we don't know. Trying to
Yes,
understand and plummet the one in front of us. Uh,
yes,
huge as well. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
And that's you, but you learn to have those conversations and they get easier.
Mhm.
And you also learn how to listen to them. And you hear their voice a lot easier. I'll be upstairs and I'll hear my wife's voice a lot easier than I used to. And sometimes I'll poke my head and go, "Did you say something, Cindy?" And
Right.
she'll go, "No, I didn't." I said, "Oh, okay, I thought I had." What
You're
happens?
thinking
You
loud.
become yeah, you become sensitive to their voice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
I'll be in a crowd and she'll get separated or something. We'll be at the state fair or whatever. And I'll be looking around, go, "Wonder where'd she go?" And then all of a sudden I'll hear her voice,
Yeah.
and I'll turn, "Oh, she's over here." And there's a bunch of people talking,
Right.
but I hear her voice
Yeah.
because I've learned to tune to it, and I don't have to have it right next to me, but I can hear it. And I'll walk over to her and I said, well, you went off and left me. Oh, I was looking at this. And so that's the way it is with living intuitively by spirit, which is how we should live, is to
Yeah.
listen. And then we'll know what we need to say back.
Right.
We'll know. And then it does become a conversation.
Mhm.
And most of the time when I respond, it's questions. I'll go, okay, well, what about I have a question?
Right.
And I'm learning that why questions are never are saying, well, why this or why that are never as good a question as
Oh, good.
who am
Good.
I? Who are they?
Mhm.
What did that mean?
Mhm.
Why did they, I mean, I know why they did, but what was behind that?
Yeah.
And I have found spirit wants you to ask those questions and say, well, yeah, she did that, but I wonder what that meant.
Mhm.
I wonder what was
Mhm.
behind that. I was at a store not too long ago. Now be careful when you start living intuitively because God, the spirit gets serious about it. And You'll hear the voice all the time. A lot of y'all probably already know this, but this woman was with her child. She was in a suit, and he was obviously picking him up from daycare. And she had dropped this milk, and it had broken, and it was all over the place. Well, the Spirit said, you got to clean that up for her and tell her to go ahead and go get something else, and you'll take care of it. And I was like, as I looked at her, she walked away from it. She just left it there. And I thought to myself, well, I'm not going to, if she's not even responsible enough to take care of that, I'll go let the store know about it. And then, but I could tell on her face, man, it's obviously had been a long day. Mm-hmm. And so I let the store know about it. And then as I'm walking out, the Spirit was like, you have no idea what's going on at home with her, do you? I'm like, no, I don't. Mm-hmm. You have no idea what's going on with her child. Mm-hmm. No, I don't. You don't really understand what's happening in her marriage, do you? I'm like, no. And he said, I know all of it. All I wanted you to do was clean up the milk. Wow. Let me worry about everything else. I brought you to the store today to clean up the milk, not to pick this other stuff up. You missed, son, what I wanted to say to you. Mm. But don't judge my girl when you don't know her. Wow. I know what's going on, and I'm not worried about her walking away from the milk. I got you to clean that up. But don't worry, I had none of my children do it. Wow. Man, I got in my car and thought to myself, listening means not just listening, but acting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not a passive way to live. Yeah. We must, in some ways, they say, manifest into the world. Yeah. Yeah. If anyone should be manifesting into the world, it should be Christians. Yeah. Yeah. It is not a passive activity. Mm-hmm. But when we do this, it won't be the way we used to do it, through works, through effort. We will do it in cooperation with the Spirit. It's kind of like the counseling I do, the coaching. Every single person who's come to me came to me of their own volition. Yeah. I've never advertised once, other than on my website to tell people it's available. But for the first 2 years, I didn't have the website. Sure. But I just told the Lord, I really enjoy this, so bring the people you want to come. And he did. When I was starting this, a friend of mine who was a part of the group, just after I'd started the LLC, he came to my house, or he called me. I was at breakfast with my wife. He called me, said, are you home? I said, no, I'll be home a little bit. So I said, meet me at noon. So he came over, and I thought he was coming over to I don't know what he wanted. Because I told him, I said, can you just tell me over the phone? And he was like, no, I gotta come there. So I said, okay, come on over. So he comes in and he hands me this check. And I said, what's this? He goes, that's the first 2 years of your financial issues for this. This will take care of the first 2 years. Wow. And I looked at it, and it was a lot of money. Oh, he said, I know you just opened up the LLC. He said, when it's open, deposit it. And he said, you don't need to worry about money, at least for the next 18, 24 months. Wow. And it was enough to pay me to do it. Now, I didn't get up in front of them and say, I need some money. Right. No. But I told God, I said, I will do whatever is required because I really want to do this. But this is what I need, and I'm so grateful I've got it. And that was about 4 months earlier. Wow. And nothing happened except me putting money in the bank account. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. But I saw it. I felt it. I knew this is the right thing. And that guy shows up. He's just, and the truth of the matter is, he's very well off. He was part of my board later. And he told me one time, I struggle with giving. Mm-hmm. And it was the biggest step of giving my wife and I had ever done. Wow. But we knew for 3 months we were supposed to do this. And I wrestled with what I should do. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, do you want it back? He was like, no, I don't want it back. He said, I've already gotten it back. Yeah. I said, really? He goes, yeah. He said, I invested some stuff for my daughter because I'm going to give it. She's graduating from medical school. I'm going to give it to her when she gets out to help pay down some stuff. He said, I already got it back. It grew in over a year. And I said, oh, goodness, I can't believe that. Beautiful. Listen, man, the universe is built to be at your beck and call because the life of Christ is your life. Yeah. And I never saw Jesus crying about anything other than the loss of those he loved. Right. I never saw him complaining. He spoke to the fig tree. I always like this. Jesus didn't yell at the fig tree. He didn't wait around for something to happen to the fig tree. He just said, may fruit never grow from you ever again. And he left. He just spoke to it. Yeah. He had an intention. He had an emotion. He said it and he left. He let God worry about the outcome. Well, they come back that night, it's withered up. Mm-hmm. But he didn't get to sit there and watch it wither. He didn't know when it was going to wither. They could have come back and said, oh, you cursed this, but there's still some fruit on there. Let's see if we can get something off of it. Right. That's not what happened. Yeah. And it's a different way. We are built to thrive. And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about life. Yeah. Yeah. Joy. Impacting people's lives. I care about people. The rest of it is okay, but it's a tool. Yeah. Yeah. It's a tool. Exactly. It's just a tool to help to connect with people. Yeah. And it's kind of like the Bible. A lot of people have gotten upset with me sometimes the things I say in the Bible, but I will tell you this: if I understand Scripture properly, the Bible is Jesus' tool. It's his servant.
Sure, of course it
It's
is.
not his master.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, it's under his feet.
Yeah, for sure.
Therefore, it is also under your feet. It is it's a tool that he will use in your life.
Exactly.
And it's not your master.
Right.
It's there to help you.
Exactly.
And the more we live from within, the more it just opens up in ways I cannot even describe. And many of y'all watching this probably know this. But that's kind of what I do. And I just take people to this 3-step process. And some get through it in a year and others take years because our flesh is different, right?
It is. I mean, and the beauty, however long it takes you, it's worthwhile, right?
Oh gosh,
Because
yes.
we get what we need. We get what we need as sons and daughters of God. So, however, so comparing journeys, I mean, it's good to hear about journeys, but to compare, we get into trouble because each journey is unique because we're all unique. We all have different backgrounds and different crap we need to get over. Yeah, different crappy program and all those things, religious
That's it.
upbringing, all of that. But it's a beautiful path forward. Did you want to share what the three big steps are, or?
Yeah. Yeah. The first thing we do is we help people make peace with their past. And the first thing is we have to go back to the reality that we have been traumatized, hurt, and we have pains and disappointments, especially. And the biggest disappointment is in God and ourselves.
Yeah.
And because God hasn't been who we thought he should be or hasn't done what we thought he should do, we feel like we've let God down. We've let ourselves down. Maybe we've let others down. We didn't perform the way we thought we should have, and we think God's maybe even upset with us about it. So what I do is called a life map, and I pull up a whiteboard, and that usually takes about 3 sessions. And we start with the grandparents and work our way down to the kids. And when we're done, they'll sit there usually and look at it and weep because it'll be the first time that they've seen it from a 40,000 foot level.
Mm-hmm.
And they begin to see, and out of it usually comes what are called strongholds in the Bible, but what I call false identities, false statements about ourselves. The 3 greatest false statements people live with is there's something wrong with me.
Yep.
I'm not enough.
Yep.
I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
And then also I'm not lovable.
Yeah.
And those statements are always on their shoulder in their mind. They're always there.
Not
But
with
they
this time.
came, right.
Mm-hmm.
They came from hurts,
Mm-hmm.
traumas, and emotional wounds is what I call them, do not heal on their own. They go into a part of your brain, a part of your emotional makeup, and they stay there until you remove them,
Exactly.
until you let the spirit remove them until they're healed. But they create the false identity. So if you were abandoned, you may have felt abandoned. You may have felt rejected.
Mm-hmm.
It can create, there's something wrong with me. Well, they did it because I'm not lovable.
Right.
I'm not enough.
Yep.
But that's not true.
No.
They did it because they had their own issue.
Exactly.
They had their own hurt. They had their own, it was their journey. It was the thing they had gone through that they had not healed. And that impacted you.